Hey, everybody. Good morning and happy Tuesday to everyone. So, Carrie and I were reviewing this article that we came across in Idmin, and I can share it with you guys in Facebook and in YouTube when we post this later. But this article is so incredibly interesting. It's about the show Ted Lasso. I don't know if any of you are watching that. It's actually one of my favorite shows because it is so inspiring and it's just so moving. It's such a lovely show. I don't know if you've watched it or not, Carrie. It's a great show. But one of the things that Ted
Yeah,
Lasso
I
is like
haven't yet.
most is he's most quoted for is this quote, and I'm going to read it to you. He says, "Do you know what the happiest animal on earth is? It's a goldfish." And he says, "Do you know why? It's because the goldfish has a 10-second memory. So be a goldfish." So
Mhm.
Carrie and I thought that it's so inspiring to think of this way or think like a goldfish and have a 10-second memory because there's
Mhm.
so much value in being able to let go of a mishap or a mistake or a failure and pivot and just start leaning and moving forward more quickly if you're able to think like that. So, Carrie, what are your thoughts on this quote?
Well, I love that he mentions the happiest, animal. Of course, I'm sure we don't necessarily know this, but let's assume that's true because why are we unhappy as human beings or as business owners? If we actually look at it, it's not the event that occurred that makes us unhappy or miserable or worried or anxious or upset. It's actually our thought process around the event. So an
Hmm.
event, a situation has no emotion attached to it. There's no situation that has an immediate emotion. We attach the emotion to it. And
Right.
our thinking and our obsessive thought patterns, the egoic part of our mind that wants to keep bringing this back to us over and over again to make sure we don't do it again, because man, that didn't make us feel good about ourselves, right? Because remember, the egoic part of the brain is trying to keep us safe. If we allow those repetitive thought patterns, we will be very miserable.
Yes.
So we won't be happy. So number one, I love this because I think it makes us happier people and happier business owners. And it takes off some of the misery that people have in building a business that it's self-inflicting, right? Misery. So I love that. I also love the concept of the 10-second memory. And it made me think of one of the very first conversations you and I had together, Haley, which was where you were saying, it just seems like you just don't even care. You just go do it. Well, how do
Yes.
you get yourself to just go do something and not worry about it? It's because I've let go of all of the things from the past that didn't go well, and I'm not worrying about them anymore because literally I've just removed that from my memory. I've created a thought pattern that is like a goldfish. Like once it's
It's
done, and I
done.
don't let it impact me anymore. I move on to the next thing I'm working on and I focus on that. It isn't a
Yeah.
natural thing that our brain does as a human being, but it can certainly be done.
Well, what I've seen you've been able to do so effectively is that you don't dwell on anything because you realize that nothing lasts, whether it's good or bad. You're able to take it all in stride and keep going and keep learning every single day, which I think so many people, we just don't know how to do that. Like, Carrie, we're all the late people and you're just like way ahead of everyone else. So,
I don't
like,
know how I became a goldfish. Yeah.
I mean, if so for me or for anyone else who's listening, who we're not like that. Like we do, like something happened to us yesterday or something happened to us today and it was really emotional, if it was really painful, or it could be the opposite, Carrie, like because how many people dwell on something really exciting that happened or something really magical or I mean, something really, really good happened. And then we dwell on it and dwell on it, and dwell on it. Like, how do we not do that?
Yeah, so that's an interesting concept, Haley, because you know how people will reminisce about times in their lives or relationships or things that were really good.
Mm-hmm.
And although that's not a bad thing, it does rob us from enjoying what is in the moment. So no matter if we're dwelling on past things that were good or bad, they are distracting us from what is happening in front
Right.
of us right now. So, I almost think that I just forced myself to conceptually become a goldfish because I had the strongest desire of probably I've ever had in my life to just quite frankly realize that our thoughts are the ones inflicting pain upon us or frustration or bad feelings about ourselves or failures that we can't get over, or
Right.
even something good in the past that we can't get back because it's in the past and it's all done, it's creating something that we don't want, which is a feeling we don't desire to have. And we'd rather just be able to be happy in our moment that we're sitting in. And I think it literally was this moment after going through some different things where I was like, I have no desire to not be happy anymore and to let these things bring me down. And so with that motivation came this just training of my brain, which was realizing I was having those thoughts that were not making me happy, that were creating some roadblock in my life or business. And I immediately just shut it down. And it was a conscious decision. So you move from that subconscious thought pattern of your mind thinking about it, obsessing over it, replaying in your mind, to shutting it down and saying, no, I'm not listening to that anymore. I'm moving on to something different. Now I don't even think about it, because just like anything, your brain is a muscle. When those things start entering, I don't even notice them anymore. I'm already on to the next thing, but that takes time. So this tactic or the strategy to become a goldfish today, I think, Haley, number one is decide that you don't want to be emotionally attached and a victim emotionally of your thoughts anymore. You are not interested in living your life that way any longer, because you realize that these events are not creating the problems for you. It's the way you think about them that is.
Yes.
So you therefore have control, and you just decide in the moment right now, not interested. Then the second thing is, when those thoughts come in, that you are aware and you immediately move from that subconscious pattern into a conscious thinking, and you make an active choice in that moment to stop thinking about it and then redirect. So you have to redirect your brain to something else in order to distract it, right? You can't just decide I'm not thinking about that anymore and then not have anything else to think about. That probably wouldn't work.
You have to get into action, and usually you have to take some kind of a massive action, or like you said, just pivot. So that the other thing that I've realized too, which is really interesting, is that when, at least for myself, when I tend to reminisce on the past, whether it be like a really, really good experience, or when I'm holding on to something that happened to me a while ago, remember all of those emotions, like your mind doesn't realize, your body doesn't realize that your mind is thinking about something that happened in the past. So you physically start to re-feel all of the things that you felt back then.
Yeah.
And then if I'm meant to make a decision, like let's say I'm reminiscing about something and I'm like feeling sick, or like my heart is racing, my body doesn't realize that it's just a thought that's in or a story I'm telling myself. Now I have to make a decision. Like if I'm working on a project, or I have something that's due, or if I'm lead generating, running my business, stepping into a coaching call, now I'm coming into that with that energy.
Yes.
How detrimental is that? If you're trying to lead your team members, or you're trying to make a business decision, how can you possibly be present and move forward if our emotional and energetic state is in the past?
Well, and then that leads to an interesting concept, Haley, which is then you bring that energy in, you probably make a business decision or put off some energy that actually gets you back more of what happened in the past that you don't want. Because remember, if we are getting things we don't like or want in our world, it's because of what we're doing or putting out there. We can change the response of other people. And that's in lead generation, in sales, in leadership, in relationships. It's how we're being more than what we're doing, even oftentimes, that gets us what we want or what we don't want. So I think that what we have to do is we just have to become critically aware of this reality. In order to stop something from happening, we have to be fully aware that we are literally doing this to ourselves. And then we have to just say, we don't want that anymore. It's not serving us. And we have to make a very, very conscious decision. I'm not living this way anymore. And it's not going to be perfect just because you make the decision. However, it will allow you in those moments to move from that pattern, hopefully, into something more positive. And so when you said you have to get into massive action, I actually think what you should do when you're in that moment of like, I'm reliving a failure, so I'm scared to move forward in this. And I keep, oh my gosh, I lost somebody from my team. This is the most common one that will literally set business owners back. I'm losing an agent from my team. They are leaving me.
Mm,
My ego is crushed. Emotionally, I feel like a failure. What are other people going to think about me? Are the other agents going to leave? Who am I to be growing a team? I am fully rejected as a human being, and I feel the lowest point that I could feel. Most business owners that have a team of any sort, when someone leaves them, this is one of the most detrimental moments, especially if it's the first time, but every time, until they can literally move past it and remove the personal rejection from the business rejection, it'll never get better.
right, right.
Honestly, what most people do is they linger on that. They bring that negative kind of energy and that stress and that
Right. That
scarcity
rejection
mindset,
feeling. Yeah.
yeah, into the rest of the conversations with the rest of their agents, which might actually make some of their agents want to leave, but they don't realize that's what's happening. So instead, if you could literally shut that off, have a 10-second memory, and then what I think you have to do is you actually have to go out and get into some recruiting action. Do something completely opposite. Like what
Mm,
you feel like is, I shouldn't even be having a team. I feel unworthy. Somebody just left me. Go talk to somebody else about joining your team, like right now. And the reason
yeah.
why I say that is because you're doing something so opposite of what you feel in that moment, that you are strengthening that muscle of that resiliency, and really just shutting one thing off and going to the next, that it almost is going to make you feel so uncomfortable. But every time you do that, it's like the failure is so insignificant if you can get into an action that actually is, so powerful like that. And I think that that's what I do. I mean, like, okay, that really sucked. I'm going to go and create something really, I'm just going to go do something really crazy over here in the opposite, because if that works, right, it undoes anything that might have been crappy over here. If I linger on this is the last thing
Right,
that
right.
like I have to go off of, or that people have to go off of. No, just be done with that and move on to something bigger and better. It's going to be really uncomfortable. Like, it's going to be extremely uncomfortable, but when you do it, I think that it's life changing. It's really, really life and business changing. So one thing though about being a goldfish, and I love your perspective on this, Haley, because those are the positives about becoming a goldfish and having a 10-second memory. A 10-second memory is different than a 10-second attention span.
Yes,
And
it
I
is
think
definitely.
that it's good to have a distinction here, because people might be like, Cari and Haley told me to have a 10-second attention span. No, we did not tell you that. You have to be able to focus for more than 10 seconds. Now, I don't easily naturally focus for more than 10 seconds because my brain is wired, or I've maybe trained my brain to move on to things so fast.
So quickly, yeah.
There could be a negative byproduct of this. So then I have to be aware of that. And I have to focus on, breathing techniques. There's actually something I learned in my success coaching certification, to raise your eyes above, your level, and stare at something for about 10 seconds. And then bring that like gaze into the conversation again, into the coaching conversation, into the training, into the whatever it is. It actually resets your brain and gets you back into focus when you find yourself being very distracted. And you could literally be doing this like every couple of minutes. And pretty soon you also become really, it's a habit that is formed, and it's a refocusing that actually happens. And it's physiology. Raising your eyes up and staring at a space actually does something to your mind to help your mind focus. So think of some techniques, meditation. I know, Haley, you do this, different things, your morning routine. Physical exercise changes the mind, the mind itself, and creates more opportunity for focus. So you've got to find ways that you get your focus longer than 10 seconds. Your memory shouldn't be longer than 10 seconds. Those are two very different things.
Yeah. No, and I love that you were able to distinguish those two things. Here's the thing. If you feel like you have a short attention span and you're an agent or you're CEO or a leader of some kind, I just want you to know, like, you're absolutely not alone. Most visionaries, that is how they think. They go from one thing to the next thing, to the next thing, to the next thing. Most entrepreneurs think that way.
Yeah.
And you're not alone. And there's actually nothing wrong with you. You're not like broken, or you have something internally happening to you.
Right.
No, this is very common.
Mhm.
And as a visionary, as a leader, we want you to think that big all of the time, and practice being present in the moments that you do need to be present. When you're meeting with your team, when you're doing a coaching session, when you're doing your interviews, when you
Yes.
are trying to be more purposeful, also be more intentional. And
Yes.
I have heard that, with raising your eyes up. So I do that a lot when I'm on Zoom. I don't even realize I'm doing it. I've actually had some people telling me, like, are you listening to me? Yes, I'm listening to you. When we move our eyes,
Mhm.
usually up, it actually also stimulates our creativity.
Mhm.
And so a lot of us who are external processors or people who just tend to be more creative, when we look up or when we shift our eyes,
Mhm.
it actually does something that allows us to visually see what that person is talking about. So if you're on a
Yes.
Zoom call with me and I'm not looking at you, it's because I'm actually visualizing what you are sharing with me, which helps me to
Yeah.
internalize it and process it.
Yeah. I mean, super good strategies, very, very important things to be aware of. I think it would be good to talk a little bit more about what do we do when we do have a short attention span. So
Mhm.
let's work on having a short memory as business owners, and let's actually work on improving our short attention span. I think that would be a great topic for next week because I have some strategies, I know you do too, Haley, that have actually worked really, really well for a lot of our coaching clients. And I think that would be a good conversation as a follow-up today, because it is important for us to understand we have control over our mind.
Right.
We do have the power. We just have to figure out how we can do that. We have to be self-aware first in order to know something needs to change, and then we've got to get into action. And so we want to help you with some of those ideas and action items. So let's bring that to the call next week.
That sounds great. I'm going to email you so we don't forget, Cari.
Thank you. And this is how we work together so beautifully. Thank you guys so much. We'll see you next Tuesday.
Thank you.